Hello, everyone. My name is Tammy Tiller-Hewitt. We are thrilled to continue our leadership webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. I know that many of you have attended several of our sessions this year, and we're glad because that's telling us that we must have some really awesome speaker lineup. So since we are in webinar mode, we will not be able to hear you, but we certainly want to hear from you. So if you could just take our only ask today, and that's to use the chat to submit questions or any aha moments or useful information that you're going to be able to take away from today's webinar. I liken that to applause for our panelists, so they feel like you are applauding for them when you ask questions and interact. You will get copies of this recording today in one of two ways. Next week, I will email you with the recording as well as the slide deck from today with the panelists' bios. And so please share it. Share it among your organization, your colleagues and leaders. Second, we post all of our recordings on our website at Tiller-Hewitt.com. So feel free to always go and download and listen to those over and over again. So as many of you know, Tiller-Hewitt proclaimed this the year of the leader. At Tiller-Hewitt, we have the distinct pleasure of working side by side every single day, or really having a front row seat to the leadership challenges and triumphs. And we're always humbled by their willingness to share the good, the bad, and the awesome lessons learned, and honestly, their commitment to transparency. So you're going to hear some very unfiltered nuggets today because we want you to be able to take things back and put them to use today. So don't let their courage go to waste. Again, share this recording inside and outside your organization. Now, you're going to get some really good nuggets, so you may not want to share it with your competition, but certainly push it around your own organization. This year's leadership webinar series lineup has covered a whole host of topics, starting with challenges, which one of our panelists today actually opened the year up with us, talking about leadership challenges and what he was going to be facing in this year. And then we went all the way down to today, where we're going to talk about top alarming and amazing leadership lessons. So all of these in between about strategies and when they fail and when they don't, and how to deal with physician and executive burnout and physician retention, all topics that are near and dear to most of our hearts, are all again on our website, so you can listen to them, download and listen to them anytime. We started this year of the leader with a salute by launching our Leadership Lens podcast for growth-minded leaders. And most of the panelists today have already been a guest, and one more is about to be a guest next month on our podcast. So we are on all kinds of platforms, so there's no reason for you to miss it. But if I had to say one thing that I get the most positive comments back about, it's our podcast. Because talk about, you'll know more after you hear these panelists today, but think about having them for 30 minutes, just one-on-one. So definitely take a listen to those podcasts and sign up so you'll get them directly to your inbox. And then last, for our physician liaisons who are on the line, or leaders of liaison programs, we've published our next year workshop schedule. So you don't want to miss. It's 3 days for liaisons, 2 days for leaders of liaisons. We can also bring workshops on site. We've done that for large organizations. And it's funny, you think you have a small team until you start investigating throughout the organization all the other people that are out in the field calling on customers on your behalf. So we've started with a team of 8 and ended up having 50. We've started with a team of 20 and ended up with 100. So take a look at your organization, and you can even share the cost as well. So if you don't know much about Tiller-Hewitt, know that we are all things strategic growth. We work with healthcare leaders to consistently deliver strategic growth and measurable results. We do that first to build the foundation on the top half of this graphic, We believe that not all business is good business, so we have to be strategic. And all organizations are looking for rapid impact, strategic growth. And that's our sweet spot where we can do that. And then the bottom half are how we execute after we've created this strategic growth readiness plan or playbook. The implementation is done by across the bottom through a physician integration program, a liaison program, and then our PRM product as well. So this is who Tiller-Hewitt is. Give us a call if you need any help with your growth initiatives. So as it relates to today and the year of the leader, our mantra at Tiller-Hewitt is everyone wins when the leader gets better. Because when the leader gets better, everyone gets better. And we all know that it rises and falls with leadership. If you step back and look at an organization, you can see quickly what's really the issue at the organization. Do we have a leadership issue, or are there other process or system issues in place? So today you're going to get a lot of great takeaway information. So I want you to remember that the truth is, oftentimes we have limitations. We want to be innovative. We have all of the intentions, but we're limited with bandwidth or resources or budgets. And that's why sometimes we're the innovator and sometimes we're the imitator. So, even the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. So feel free to take all of this information that you're going to get today and use it to your advantage at your organization. So quickly, do you ever wish you could be a fly on the wall in a boardroom or in a room where there are a lot of just heavy hitter leaders around the table, just talking about the very things that you're so passionate about? Well, today, you and I get to be that fly. And in fact, they're glad that we're here and they want to hear from you while they're talking. So we have 4 amazing leaders, top performing leaders that are going to wrap up this year's leadership webinar series. So I'm going to let them do their own introductions. I'm going to go around alphabetically, but first let me bring down my slide deck so you can see their faces and we can get started. Thumbs up that slide is down. Awesome. Okay. All right. So Chris, you want to start us out?
Yeah, sounds great, Tammy. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at in our great country. My name is Chris Clay. I'm the president and CEO at HSHS St. Elizabeth's Hospital in O'Fallon, Illinois. So just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. We are one of 15 hospitals within Hospital Sisters Health System. We really regionally encompass Southern Illinois and then Northwestern and Southeastern Wisconsin. I've been with Hospital Sisters Health System since 2009. My clinical background is physical therapy. Interestingly enough, I tell people I must have not been very good because I didn't last long as a physical therapist, but in reality, early on in my career, I just knew that I had a heart and a hunger for business development and growth and really strategy. And thankfully, with some deliberate personal development, doors opened, and I'm thrilled to serve as the president and CEO here at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. So Tammy, thanks for the invite. Appreciate being here this afternoon, and I look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Devin.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Tammy, for the invitation. My name is Devin Hyde. I serve as the president, chief executive officer of Lake Charles Memorial Health System. We are a 3-hospital system in Southwest Louisiana, in between New Orleans and Houston. We have approximately 2,800 employees, 120 employed physicians, serve a catchment area of about 350,000. We're the largest healthcare system in the area. We serve as the regional trauma center and referral area. I've been with the organization about 18 months. Sort of something, I guess, interesting that Tammy always likes me to bring up is Lake Charles has the moniker of being the most weather-battered city in the United States. In August and October of 20, Lake Charles suffered a direct hit from a Category 4 hurricane, followed 6 weeks later by a Category 2 hurricane, followed 2 months later by a massive freeze, and 3 months later by a biblical-esque flood that was devastating. So I arrived in April of 20, post-hurricane, post-freeze, pre-flood. and have been with the organization, like I said, through the remediation, renovation, and rebuilding, not only of the health system, but of the community as a whole. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Please feel free to ask us anything you'd like. We're delighted to be here.
Awesome. Frank?
All right. Hello, everyone. Tammy, thanks again for the invite. And gentlemen, looking forward to the discussion today. Name is Frank Sawyer, Senior Vice President of Operations at Trinity Oakland, located in Pontiac, Michigan, which is northern Detroit metro area. I've been in the healthcare space, primarily operations, for the past 17 years. Learned a lot, gotten to work with a lot of great leaders in some different organizations along the way. For me, just really passionate about career development and mentoring, customer service, and orienting around the patient, and how do we innovate within this space to focus more on the patient. And as we move forward in this post-pandemic world, in the hospital space, how do we not just survive, but how do we thrive, and how do we reconstitute ourselves in this new world? So looking forward to sharing a lot today and learning a lot, and just thank everybody for their time.
Awesome. And William, you want to wrap it up?
Tammy, thanks a lot for having us today. I'm William Mahoney. I am the president of Cox Medical Center Branson, and I'm a senior vice president in the Cox Health System based out of Springfield, Missouri. My responsibilities are mainly the 3 rural hospitals in Cox Health. I have 2 critical access hospitals, and then the Branson Hospital that has 159 beds. My career over the last 26 years, I've led 4 different hospitals. I love rural America, and I have done a lot of turnarounds. I guess I always want to be at the table. Maybe it's ego, but I'm excited here today to learn from these other speakers and also to have this great dialogue.
Awesome. Well, I am so excited for you all to be here, and buckle up, everyone. Here we go. So I want to step outside of healthcare for a second to start kind of level set and talk about a familiar organization to most of us, and that's Chick-fil-A. Everybody loves Chick-fil-A. Let's face it, we love Chick-fil-A waffle fries, or for me, it's anything on the Chick-fil-A menu. But operationally, there is not a leader alive, or I don't think there is a leader alive who doesn't want to emulate the service excellence, the culture, the friendliness, the think outside the box mentality, and not to mention just the unbelievable throughput. I mean, anybody ever drive through and say, oh, if I could just get that throughput in my patient access department, right? We need to learn something and, learn how does somebody turn a single lane drive-through into a 4 or 5 lane drive-through and move 1,000 cars through, in 5 or 10 minutes. And I know I'm exaggerating, but it gets close. They do a lot better than we do. And how about how they take these trained employees out, equip them with a small handheld device so they can take orders, they can go to the customer, get payment right there, make it super easy. The customer doesn't even have to get out of their car. They don't have to park. They don't have to trap in and place their order, or let the customer order online. That's nice. And then have a special area where you pull in and you pick up that online order. So the truth is, we were getting close to that during the pandemic. Any of you guys agree? Like, we were starting to see some of those systems take life in our organization. But interesting story, in the early 90s, Chick-fil-A was facing off the competition at that time that was getting ready to enter the market called Boston Market. Like, we don't even hear about them now. But at the time, the leaders of Chick-fil-A were trying to figure out how they could get bigger and faster. And the founder, we all know his name, Truett Cathy, is known to pound his hand on the table and say, I am sick and tired of listening to you talk about how we can get better. If we get better, our customers will force us to get bigger. So today, guys, what I want to talk about is how we can get better as an organization and as an industry, and continue to think about getting better and better and never resting on our laurels. So let's open it up. I want to start by level setting with you all. I'd like to go around, and we'll go opposite alphabetical this time, but I'd like to level set for you all to share what you feel like are the top challenges, 1, 2, 3, either in your organization, in the industry. And by the time we get around back to you, Chris, a lot of the things may have been said, but that's okay. You can say it too if you consider it a challenge, because the solutions are all different. And I think that's the value that our audience is going to win today. So let's start with you, William. What would you say are the top 1 or 2 challenges?
I think about 90% of us are going to agree with these answers. Workforce, obviously, especially the contract labor, the pace of change, things are really moving, and we have to be ready for that. I'd say inflation's obviously a challenge also, with supply chain increases and the reimbursement we don't have to pay for that. Those would be the top ones to me.
Okay. All right. Frank, you're up.
Sure. So first thing that comes to mind is that customer and that patient. I think our customers are attempting to send us a message that they want something different. I think they've seen the entire business world adapt to be more consumer centric over the past few years, and then they enter the healthcare space and it feels a lot like it always has. And they're starting to ask why. So whether it's truly leaning into telemedicine, truly leaning into urgent cares and quick stop operations for them, truly being much more service oriented, I think they want something else. And if you want to test that hypothesis, ask someone who's experienced healthcare, tell me about how much you loved it. They're not going to. They're going to talk about how they survived it and how they got past it. But from a service, did they really get what they needed? Probably not. So that's one. And then thing 2 is also around pace of change. And when you look at our industry, at the very moment, we need to get more agile and more innovative. We're actually doing the opposite and getting more bureaucratic, more structured, more policy driven. And so how do we shake free of those parameters and create a situation where we can be creative and agile and build that new future for our patients and our workforce?
Wow. Listen, everybody who's listening saying, I can't believe they didn't charge us $1 million for this. If you're going to give me the answers here, I can't wait. All right, Devin, you're up.
Well, Frank and William are both really tough to follow, but I would agree with what they've said. Payer issues, reimbursement issues, certainly the challenges that we've had from staffing and availability. Maybe moving a little bit away from that and kind of parlaying on what Frank said. We talk about being patient-centric and customer-centric and really defining who are our customers, what does that look like? And I think we're experiencing a challenge from really pursuing a fundamental shift in our thinking and becoming more patient-centric as opposed to physician-centric. And that's going to be a hot topic, and I'm sure will spur a fair amount of conversation. But becoming, I think, an area of opportunity for us as an industry is becoming comfortable with crucial conversations and looking at doing things differently to meet the needs of the communities that we serve, but also take care of the patients as well as the systems as a whole.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. This week, Frank and I are on a webinar that really talks about that community dynamic. And are we marrying the organizational dynamics with our community dynamics? And how can we communicate with a community that we don't represent internally? So that's a conversation for another day, but I love that you brought that up. All right, Chris, you want to cross home base with our challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. Wow, what a roster of opportunities. I completely agree. But there are 2 things that rise to my mind. First is a true lack of focus. We talked about pace of change, competing priorities. We, in our current state in healthcare, we have an inability to focus on, the key priority, and that just slows us down. So lack of focus is one, or an inability to focus on the true task or the true need. The second is understanding who our customer is. One of the things I speak to often in our organization is we're here for one reason only, and that's our patients, but we don't all see it that way. We oftentimes refer to our colleagues as customers, our physicians as customers, and they are, as an operator of a hospital, but our sole purpose needs to be our patients. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. All right. So just a little cheeky here, Chris. What do the docs say when you say, we need to understand that you're not the customer, the patient is? Can they handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. They can. So that they're part of the solution. And I think it's important that you make sure that they're part of the discussion, they're part of the solution. So then they feel engaged and connected. And then they eventually get comfortable with the fact that it's not all about them. The reality of our situation is our hospitals don't operate without physicians, engaged medical staff members. But sometimes we as leaders have to help them see that their number one customer is their patient as well. And we're aligned, we're in this together. So that's a leadership opportunity to get our organizations to see that consistently.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love your answer because you started with, you've got to get them involved. So you can't decide at a leadership level that, the customer is our patient and then go tell the doctor. They need to be a part of that understanding and solution because they're the ones that are more of the implementation, if you will, than we are as leaders, right? So without them. All right. So those are all awesome. So now we're going to switch our heads, now that we have our head around some of the challenges, and we've not gotten any added from the group yet, but let's start talking about solutions. So, as we talked about for this workshop, to talk about the best solutions that you've initiated and how they worked, to talk about what's alarming, what have you stopped doing and why? And then maybe some amazing stories around excellent execution or goals accomplished or how you've built momentum from when it was lost potentially before, during, or after the pandemic. So I want to start by talking about this. When on one of my podcast interviews, I talked to a leader about why was it that we were able to move at record speed. Like nobody would have ever believed that healthcare could move that fast and pivot on an hourly basis sometimes, but we did it. And we stood up programs and we stood up stations. We just did crazy amount of things. And she said it was because that success was due to a singular focus. We had a singular challenge, and that was COVID. But you all challenged me on that now today, and why that's something that we actually can look at again today. Frank, I'm going to have you open that up because you were the one that knocked me upside the head first with that.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. And really, when you think about what I perceive our singular focus, it's business sustainability and viability. Healthcare is really at an inflection or a crisis point where the margin ceiling is getting ever lower if you're in a position where you're able to make a margin at all anymore, and the cost floor is getting higher. So I like to say we're getting squished and so we got to ask ourselves, how do we rally around? How do we make sure that there's, a healthcare operation to be provided into the future and in a new environment for our patients, for our colleagues, for our communities? And it really is all around that innovation and sustainability that we should all focus around, and getting out of our silos or our lanes, that say, hey, this is why we got to focus on the same old way, but looking towards that future. And the same way with the pandemic, we knew, okay, we've got to keep our colleagues safe. We've got to help in the healing process with our patients and get through this pandemic together. I think we have to finally start having a cohesive discussion on how do we build the health system of the future collectively, whether you're a payer, whether you're a physician, whether you're a hospital, whether you're a clinician, because otherwise external forces have proven they're going to come in and do it for us, be it an Amazon, a CVS, a company that is yet to emerge. They're all trying to figure this out for us while we're still living in the past doing the same way. So I just think we need to rally around that, or someone's going to come in and replace us.
So you're, in a nutshell, you're saying the singular focus is the financial performance of the organization at the end of the day, the bottom line, so we can know?
Not necessarily, though that is absolutely a part of it. And when you think about it, any company thrives, yes, financially, when they orient around what is their mission and what is the customer that they're trying to serve. You serve the mission and the customer first, and the finances typically take care of themselves. So the business proposition is, how do we best take care of the customers, the patients, and then build that future towards better financial viability.
Okay. All right. Who else wants to talk about a singular focus? I mean, Chris, you talked about that's one of the biggest challenges, is the lack of focus and the inability to focus on a true need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, COVID-19 is a really good example for many of us. And I know there's some fatigue around COVID-19, but the reality is we learned a lot about ourselves throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And to me, the singular takeaway, when I look at our organization and the fact that we were able to stand up, testing and, drive-through testing and, turning inpatient units into negative pressure units and sourcing PPE, all of those things we were challenged with. It didn't matter where you were or are in the country, we were all faced with those situations. But the key takeaway for me is we moved quickly, we moved effectively, and we provided an ultimate service. People got the care they needed quickly. And for me, the why is I got out of people's way. We let our leaders truly help us identify the opportunity, and we let people use their skills and their strengths, and they made it happen literally in less than 24 hours many times. And so a takeaway is sometimes we just have to get out of the way of our leaders, and that is hard to do because as we come up within our executive roles, you have a tendency to be a doer. That's the reality of who we are or how we're built. But that's a key takeaway for me in terms of, what did I learn from the crazy pandemic? And I find myself applying that today. There are situations that we're dealing with in the moment now that I historically would be more actively engaged with, but I have high trust in my leadership team and my leaders, and we set the course together, but then let people go to work and put their talents to work.
Isn't that very funny that was a big lesson that was learned? Yeah. Not that senior leaders haven't picked it back up, which Frank, I know you're probably nipping at the bud to comment back to that, and then I'm going to switch to William and Devin, but you want to talk about that, leaders getting out of the way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo what Chris said about the pandemic and being able to step back and let the folks closest to it work their magic and come up with solutions and try and fail and change and succeed. But what you see post-pandemic is really that snap back to the old way of, imposing on the leaders closest to it, and in that bureaucracy just coming back and stifling change and progress again. And so I think humbling ourselves, taking a step back, letting innovation and creativity come bottom up, and then us empowering them to get the work done and giving the tools and resources to make it successful is a lesson that we need to remember from the pandemic.
Yeah. Devin, what do you want to say about?
I think it's interesting that we're starting to see, and we're starting to see a shift in the focus, because COVID-19 galvanized leaders, galvanized physicians, galvanized frontline staff, hospitals, health systems, payers. The world at large became singularly focused on this enemy, this threat that none of us truly understood. We didn't know how to respond. And it forced us to be creative, to be innovative, and to really move quickly to ensure the safety of our communities. And then as it continued, and I think all of us initially thought, okay, this is going to be a 30, 60, 90, maybe 120 day issue. And as it drug from a year to 18 months to 2 years, our focus shifted again because we knew how to take care of the patients to the best of our ability. Then it became taking care of the caregivers. All of our focus, all of our resources were focused on our physicians, on our staff. trying to deal with burnout, trying to deal with all of these different things, the escalation in prices. And it kind of was a secondary wave that we had to be very reactionary in a lot of cases. I think corporations, system leadership became hyper focused on trying to do the right thing, but also micromanaging in cases. Sometimes we would get out of our own way, but very quickly be drawn back into, okay, I'm here to fix the problem. I am not a clinician by training. So how can I help? How can I support? How can I do all of these sorts of things? I also think we got away from the construct, to Frank's point a little bit, we got away from the construct of running a business, because no matter what you believe, healthcare systems are in fact a business at their core. Now, we do great things. We're altruistic. We're taking care of patients. But as we start to see, you look in Becker's, you look in Modern Healthcare, you look on the front page of any newspaper about the degradation of margins, the closing of hospitals, the closing of services, that focus, from my perspective, is beginning to shift again. Back to who is our customer, and getting back to that. Because I think for a long time, past couple of years, our customers have not really been the patient population. It's been retaining the workforce, retaining the physicians, trying to survive what we thought was going to be a relatively short, finite event that now is just simply our new reality, right? We talk about COVID. We look at the mortality of COVID now. We have 5 COVID patients in house today. We've got 30 flu patients in house. So we're sort of going back to managing a business, and where is that singular focus need to be? My perception is it needs to be back on the patient. And by doing the right things for the patient, easing our physician practices, investing in technology, then we get back into physician satisfaction, employee satisfaction, the retention of employees.
Okay, awesome. William, how about you on a singular focus?
I think my colleagues have made some great points there that I could go over, but I was thinking this a little differently. I think what's been amazing in all this is that we can do it. In my rural communities, we became public health. The public health entities had nothing there. We were the ones taking over all that. We were able to see that the whole was better than the sum of the various parts as we worked together. But as I look at this focus going forward, and I think about it as an environment, the environment has changed, and we have to quit admiring our problems. We used to say, well, the payers aren't paying us enough, and supplies are expensive. We can't find people. And before the pandemic, that was probably more true of us than others. Now, everyone has inflation issues. Everyone can't find workforce. And when we're out there griping about our problems, nobody wants to listen anymore. I recently was talking with a small hospital, and I gave them some ideas to help them maybe get a bottom line. And they said, well, we have $1 million in ARPA money. We'll be okay. And I thought all that is doing is delaying the inevitable. Mm-hmm. We have to change our mindsets going forward, because there's not a lot of sensitivity in DC for healthcare right now. I'm not sure there will be here in the next couple of years.
Great point.
Okay, so let's all agree on who should be the customer moving forward. Knowing that, what Chris said earlier, it's been a lot of people. Who is the customer of today? Devin, you want to vote?
I'm going back to why we got into healthcare, which is to take care of patients.
Okay, William?
Yeah, we brought a consulting firm, went through this, patient or physician, and I'm going to vote for the one who pays the bills, the customer.
So who would that be?
I think the customer is anyone that comes for services, and anyone potentially that will come for services, however we offer it or however they want it.
Okay. Frank, how about you? Who's the customer?
The customer in my mind is the patient, full stop, period. Okay. Or the person that is guiding those care decisions. They're going to have increasing choices in the marketplace, whether we like it or not. And so how do we make sure they choose us?
Right. And Chris?
The patient. Easy answer.
So by a show of hands, giving all of you leaders agree that the customer is the patient, and that's how we're going to turn this ship around. how many within your organizations, your board and your executive team are in 100% agreement with you? Raise your hand. 100%. No. So that's a challenge for leaders right there, correct? That we're going to have to be selling this internally as well before we can continue to sell it within our organization. Chris, you made a point. I mean, we eat, sleep, and breathe physician relations. So you talking about physician engagement and involvement in this, it cannot happen without the physicians, even more so than the board and your executive team. It has to be the medical staff and you for sure have to be in lockstep. Any thoughts anyone want to share on that?
Yeah,
Tammy, I think the big thing, sorry about that.
No, William, go ahead.
I think the big part about the physicians are we've kind of got to, I think the old saying is take the pebble out of their shoe. We've got to take these problems away so that they can do what they do best. They always say, get the right physician in the right place. And the more we focus on that, I think we will please our customer. You had said earlier, and turn this thing around. I think there's more than turning this thing around than just the customer. I think we have to go back to these payer contracts. I think we have to reach out to the pharmaceutical companies. I think we need to get better mental health support for our employees with all that's going on there. So there's more than just the customer. I would say that's a front of house, but back of house, there's some things we got to work on also.
Yeah. So Tammy, we kicked 22 off with our conversation. And it's interesting to look back and reflect now a year and now really 18 months since I think our engagement started, and we've launched the dyad meetings. And when we first began the engagement, we started with 6. And we found such value in those that we're now up to 13 across the enterprise. My point to that is we started today's conversation, or I started talking about crucial conversations. And that really comes back to our physicians and our physician leaders. We are purposefully and deliberately pulling our doctors closer into healthcare operations than I think they've ever been before. And I can tell you, I'm the third CEO in 31 years, and I've only been here for 18 months. So the legacy practices within this organization are very real. And those crucial conversations, those dyad meetings, pulling the doctors in closer, talking about finances, talking about productivity, moving the patient back to front and center has not been comfortable at all. And there's been at times significant amount of pushback, and myself, the rest of the leadership team, physician leaders have been resolute in saying, no, this is how we're going to operate the organization. There is value in this. And if we cannot have very frank and direct conversations with you as our physicians or physician leaders, then we're not going to continue to move the organization forward. We're not going to be a progressive healthcare system. And I think more than ever today, if you're not moving forward, you're not progressing, you're not investing in technology, in better processes, better procedures, then we will no longer be an independent community-based health system. There will be a different badge on the side of the building. And my commitment to the board and hiring me 18 months ago was to do everything that I possibly could to ensure that at the end of my career, we were still a independent community-based healthcare system.
So tell us, while you have the mic, what you're doing about your customer-centric initiative at Lake Charles.
So when I arrived in 2021, took a look at our strategic plan, which did not exist. And so went back to sort of my roots in the for-profit environment, surfaced templates and ideas and all of that sort of thing, put together a strategic plan, moved through that in 22, have moved through that with success, but really started looking at really kind of to Chris's comment, where is our focus? And so we actually have revamped our strategic plan for 23. And literally the title page is patient-centric. So that the board, the physicians that we're bringing into the conversation in those dyad meetings understand that from the board through me, through the rest of the leadership team, that our focus is back on the patient. Now, we're not ignoring our physicians, we're not ignoring our staff, but if we're not looking at how we run the business through a single lens, then the priorities get diffused, people get off track. And if we can't have that, again, if we're not looking at it through the single lens with one key element, one singular focus, I think we're not going to be successful.
I agree 100%. William, I want to come back to you just for 1 second, because, we talked about, okay, if we're going to turn this ship, we're going to have a singular focus. And I don't want you to think for a minute that I don't know that we have payer issues and behavioral health is, at an all-time, state of emergency. I was just trying to say, if we could get a hold of one thing to get started, that we could get everyone's head in the game, that we're playing football, but when we're serving, the physicians, the staff, the this, the that, then nobody knows what game we're playing. And I think at least that gets us in the game, so leaders can then go and do other things, whether it's payer contracting, standing up some behavioral health programs or initiatives. So I just wanted to kind of state that for the record and give you another minute to respond.
No, I appreciate that clarification. Again, I really think that singular focus, obviously, as you said, is the patient experience. We brought a consulting company in this year, and the first one we're focused on is that own the experience. And first is the customer, then the workforce. So I think more and more of us are realizing that we have more people interested in that customer than ever before. And I think the other part of that is leadership matters. We're going to have to act, faster than some of those competitors we may not even be able to see or may not even be there yet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you even talked about bridges. Talk about what, your new saying on building bridges.
Yeah, we've got to build a bridge while we're on it. The game is changing. I mean, you come back, I went on vacation for 5 days, came back, and there was somebody opening up 3 urgent cares in our area. And, one day I had an employee come down the hallway and say, hey, I got an offer for 60% more from a coastal firm, and I can still work from my home. I would have never guessed a San Francisco-based firm was hiring somebody out of Branson, Missouri, to work out of their home. Things are changing like that more and more in the environment that we're presently in, and I think we'll continue to be in.
Yeah. So what's the old saying? And I don't know even who said it, that perfection is the enemy of progress. We've got to move like we did during COVID. We didn't know if we were going to do the right thing or not. We can just, as Frank, you said earlier this week, let's fail fast and let's get back up, but let's do something. So I think a lot of it is that we hide behind, instead of building that bridge, we think it has to be complete with all the lanes striped. And, no, we got to move, man. We got to move, because our competition, look, you are the hospital CEO, you live in that community, and they came in the dark of the night while you were on vacation. It's like someone had your schedule.
Yeah.
So what you guys, Devin, I think one of you guys lifted your hand. Did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's an interesting dichotomy in this, because we're talking about putting the patient first. For William, he's saying patient experience, right? That's part of their focus. For us, it's access. We lose patients on a daily basis because we're difficult to get into. And so, Tammy, you're right on the head. And I think one of the best lessons, I can't remember, in watching the pre-work of stop admiring our problems. I don't remember who said it, but to me, that crystallized a lot of some of the challenges that we have. We are experts at identifying problems. And we find a problem and we point at it, and then we measure it and we put a dashboard to it, and we hire a consultant to come in. And where there's a challenge in translation is moving towards actually physically solving the problem in whatever way that may be. You said fail forward faster. A leader that I had very early in my career used that same terminology with me. And he said, I don't really care what you're doing. Do something, try something, be innovative. Don't be afraid to fail. If you fail, then great. You found a way not to accomplish it. And I don't know if there are young leaders on the call, action is powerful. It's great to identify the problem, but one of the key takeaways I would say is do something, move, be active and proactive in problem solving. And I'll be quiet after this statement, but that's what was so powerful about what we did in COVID, is because everybody started acting immediately. We didn't know what the problem was. We didn't know how to solve it, but we started trying different things. And if we took that same zeal in our day-to-day activities of solving the issue of somebody putting up 3 urgent cares, or solving the issues of OR inefficiency, or solving throughput matters, I think we would be better, and our patients would be happier, and our physicians would be happier.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that was worth the price of admission right there. Whether you're an aspiring leader or you are a leader, like act. You want to like get that action, that they use in the movies, like action, go, do something. And Frank, I know I've heard you say that. I feel like 1,000 times. You want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to approach it a bit from a different angle. So we're all privileged in that we get to lead healthcare organizations, and our customers are clamoring for change. So take the ball and do something with that. That's our privilege and our obligation. And, I would say that we got to stop looking for that perfect silver bullet, but realize that by trying something new, other light bulbs will go off, other doors will open that will lead us to that right solution. But as you see leaders get the yips when it comes to making that decision to try something new, and they just freeze and they call decision support for more data, next PowerPoint, next this or the other. And it's, as Devin has so well articulated, the learnings occur in the movement and the failure that get you to where you want to go. So just take that first step.
Frank, can you talk a little bit about how you handle your team as it relates to encouraging and endorsing innovative ideas, but what your expectations are? I think this could be good for our audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to turn the whole process on its head. Too often leaders think it's their job to come up with the ideas and then dispatch their teams to go execute. Well, really, I feel that it's my team's role as the experts to bring me their best vetted ideas. And then it's my job to go get them the resources and support they need to make their great ideas happen. And in that sense, leadership accountability is truly bi-directional. They owe me great ideas that have been thought out and vetted, and I owe them my support and the organizational resources to make those great ideas happen.
And how has that worked? Any stories to share?
Yeah, truly that's where our best ideas have come from. And I'm sure other folks would echo the same. I'm big into using, AI and technology and machine learning. And so we pulled together a team of, bright minds in our organization. And I said, go out and find solutions so that we can redesign our operating platform and have better use of data and more predictability and bring them back. And, they went away and worked with all these organizations and companies, came back with ideas and a full platform. And at that point, it's a vetted plan that I just have to take forward and try to get success for. But it wasn't about me telling them how to execute my idea, but taking these brilliant people and unleashing them and having them come back with what they think the solutions are to the problems that they have to solve every day.
So that takes empowerment, leadership empowerment, that you can walk away and then trust that they're going to deliver. You have to establish expectations, I assume, and kind of some guardrails.
Absolutely. But really, it's just setting that guidepost. Where are we trying to get to? And then letting them build the map or build the bridge, and then having a team-based approach on which path do you take. But in that exercise, ideas are generated that you would have never thought of or imagined on your own. And you get those people pinging off each other and new things are generated, and you just have so much to build upon that you wouldn't have otherwise.
I love it. You guys want to add anything to that? William, you're smiling and laughing. You have something?
I was just thinking, Frank made a great point there. We went to our departments and said, what do we need to be doing differently? New business and things like this. That 2 ideas came up. People in pharmacy said, hey, you know what? How about if I call the drug companies and ask for voluntary pricing on orphan drugs? Believe me, I would have never thought of that one.
Wow.
That resulted in our system in millions of dollars. Another one, we had a lot of people not coming in from colonoscopies. So we had people in our small population health department send out these FIT tests, fecal something other tests, to people's homes. we had 20% return those. We found out that 15% of those needed colonoscopies, which resulted in 40 or 50 more colonoscopies that wouldn't have gotten scheduled before. Again, this was bottom up coming to us. And like Frank said, hey, let's listen to your vetted ideas, but let me help you get the resources. In the end, those closest to the patient are the ones that are usually going to come up with the better ideas that we can all benefit from, the patient and our companies.
Yeah. When we go in and we do lean work, which, it's standard for lean, but a lot of people, when they're trying to do growth teams or do process improvement internally, they forget that you want to get all the people who are doing it involved, not the leaders. I always say leaders tell us how we think it's happening or how they want it to happen, but it's never, ever how it really is. So getting anyone involved who touches a patient, a physician, an office staff, a family for that particular service line, so that all of the steps are represented. So Chris, Devin, you guys like your...
Yeah, I was going to say that goes right back to how Chris started by leaders getting out of the way.
Yeah. So I do have a comment, and it ties back to Devin's initial comment here about strategic planning. So if you think about the strategic planning process for our organizations, historically, it's been extremely complex, convoluted, to the point where, our frontline colleagues can't decipher what the strategic plan is. It doesn't make sense. So how do they apply it in their daily work? We recognize that, 150 years, late to the game. If you think about the sustainability of our health system, but we've simplified our strategic plan. It's growth, community, and people. Those are the three pillars. And we localized that to the front lines of our organization. And what I mean by that is we didn't create the actual tasks or things we are going to accomplish as a hospital in the boardroom. We had each individual department, localize that strategic plan. So they identified independently tasks, things that apply to their work that roll up to our three priorities. And that does a couple things. Number one, it creates subsidiarity, Tammy, and that's all about appropriate autonomy. But it creates buy-in, and it makes sense to our people. And the work it's meaningful and it's applicable. Who knows if it'll work or not? We're in the midst of this right now, where our people are now delivering, and there's appropriate accountability. But it is also an example of you engage our people in the right venue, you get out of their way, and you make it make sense for them. And it was refreshing, Devin, when you said when you walked into your new organization, there wasn't a strategic plan. And my guess is historically the process has been so challenging and hard to decipher that it's an easy thing to just not do. But it's so important.
Well, we walk into organizations where it's a secret. Like it's a secret plan. Nobody can see but the people in the room right before they put it on the shelf and right after they pull it out the next year. So I am so encouraged hearing all this about strategic planning going.
When the font is set at 6 on your strategic plan, it's either too big to manage or it's a way to camouflage the strategy.
Yeah, there you go. But I like how you're getting everyone's DNA on it. I mean, and as long as you have that accountability piece afterwards, and it's not just another, flavor of the month, program of getting the team involved, that they really are involved, and then they're measurable. There are metrics at the end to be able to show off, like, look at all that was accomplished at a department level. Anybody else have anything to say about strategic plans?
Tammy, I would just add, I think one thing I learned, and you and I talked about self-awareness. We are working with so many different generations now. And I used to be, you come the leader, you show the plan, and here's what everyone's got to do, the KPIs, the cascading goals. And now you got these generations raising their hand. What about this? What about this? And I told you the story where we were talking about days cash on hand. And the one staff member says, I don't care about your days cash on hand. I care about mine. Yeah. And that was like, okay, I think they're making a good point. We better listen, since over 50% of my workforce now is millennials and Gen Z.
I love that. I mean, I think that was a nice slap in the face for leaders to understand, we can talk all this fancy cash on hand stuff. It's like, who cares? That's your problem. That is what you get paid the big bucks for. You need to remove the barriers so they can treat our patients. But I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. Also, talking about generations, you had a rude awakening about generations with your how many girls, your daughters?
Well, I have 8 daughters, but it was 5 of my adult daughters.
So tell everyone the story. I love it.
I basically had this, moment where I sent them a little survey and said, hey, how would you rate me on, I don't know, charity, kindness, being positive, self-awareness? And I sent it to them all out individually. And they all responded, my poorest score was self-awareness. And so every one of them, and I thought, ow, that hurt. And so I've been trying to learn a lot more about that generation since they're now my bosses here at the hospital.
Yeah. I love that. That's part of the transparency that I was looking so forward to today, because I think, again, we can get a little big for our britches sitting in our seat and forget that, we have our flaws too. And so you went right to the people who are not going to lie to you. They're going to tell you, Dad, you stink, about, awareness.
Yeah, but Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
It's this year.
Listen, I think you're a saint because you have 8 daughters. I mean, let's get real with that right now.
That is a bold strategy to do an engagement survey with your family.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do it with my employees.
Well, at least you have something to work on before you do pull the trigger on your employees. But I do believe we all should survey and figure out, there's how we think we're doing, but, then there's how we're really doing. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. I know that you dropped that word on me, subsidiarity. Chris, why don't you tell me or tell our audience what that's all about and how that's a new initiative to help with the challenges of today?
Yeah, so if you think about subsidiarity, if you Google that term or look it up in the Webster Dictionary, there's a definition. But for me, it really is all about pushing autonomy down to the lowest level. And I don't say lowest level in a derogatory fashion. You move that independence down to where the real work happens. Mm-hmm. So if you go back to, we've identified, all of us are aligned on this, that our sole purpose, our sole customer is our patients. And I'm not fortunate enough to be at the bedside, but there are 1,000 people in this organization who are, and I need to give them the ability to do their work. And that, talking about subsidiarity, it also speaks to me getting out of their way. Frank, you referenced, the analytics team. You identify the opportunity, turn your experts loose, support them, and remove barriers, and it results in a product. So that's really subsidiarity and what it means, and I've heard it throughout this discussion today from every leader.
Yeah, it's just a new term we're using.
Mm-hmm.
So you all heard it first here. A couple questions that have come in. One talked about competing priorities. The one that gets the attention is the physician who yells the loudest. Anybody want to comment on that? We've all been in that room.
Yeah. I know I'm probably sounding repetitive here, but we've done I think a pretty good job, not a perfect job, of course, but through the dyad meetings of pulling those doctors in and putting them in front of their colleagues whom, it's very easy for the squeaky wheel physician to say, we all feel this way. All of the ologists are upset at you because of X, Y, and Z, or your leadership team. And then when you pull them all together, you find out that not only is it not all of the physicians, but their behavior is not accepted by their colleagues. And I have found a lot of tempering and distilling of the narrative that something is so wrong it's cataclysmic, to perhaps if the squeaky wheel doctor was doing the right thing at the right time, how they've been educated, how they've been shown, then a lot of times those problems disappear. Now, when the squeaky wheel is right and there is an issue, then you have a collaborative effort from the leadership team as well as their colleagues to say, okay, here's how we think we can solve this, other than, somebody in the leadership, somebody in the organization is an idiot because they didn't do something. It distills that down to, okay, problem recognition, moving towards a solution.
I love that. I love that you recognize both, that they're just being a cling, a clanky, whatever, and versus they have a legitimate issue. Because a lot of times we'll get complaints and someone will say, that was one doctor. I'm like, well, they do represent. I mean, if you look at our issue, we have a 2-hour wait in our patient access. People are just tired of complaining about it. So, but I love that you talked about both, that they at least see it for potentially both. They are a squeaky clang or they are legit.
Well, and a lot of times, Tammy, that conversation, what we really discover is the frustration that they're feeling and that they're communicating is born out of a legitimate concern.
Right.
My lab tests are not coming back, or whatever it may be. And it manifests in a way that we are all, that I've seen people go, oh, well, that's bad physician behavior. Right. And they're not bringing this forward. But the reality is, a lot of times that issue with the doctor has been brought up multiple times by that physician, and they've become the squeaky wheel and they've become the perceived bad actor because the problem has been identified routinely.
Yeah, they're frustrated.
And they're frustrated because they're not empowered to make the change. They can surface it, but they can't fill out the capital request. They're not going to put forward the PAF for a new role. They can't fix the broken telephone fax. You insert whatever,
Right.
office thing you need to. And so again, those dyad meetings can become very powerful for us in resolving the operational issues. And it took 3 months. It took about 3 months for us to then be able to move into the strategic and growth initiatives.
How about you other guys? Do you guys have dyad teams and the different ologies so that you can make sure that you have a sounding board? And
Yeah, and I'd like to unpack a little bit about what Devin was saying. One, physicians in particular get really upset because when they raise a problem, they expect for, again, us to do something about it. Take some kind of action, fix the problem. That's why you're here. In terms of competing priorities, oftentimes in the lack of a clear focus, everybody can make the priorities their own. And so what I like to do is, if you have that focus, tie the physician's complaint back to how does that help us achieve this objective, or how does a solution align with the broader objectives. And so in that way, you can reel their problem and their engagement into that singular focus that the organization is trying to achieve. And then you make them ideally an ally in the process, or at worst, you just tamp down the noise and demonstrate to them that you're moving in the right direction.
love that. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think from just expanding on Devin's dyad comment, I'll give an example. We are have opportunity around patient throughput. We're blessed with volume. It's a great situation to be in. And one of the number one questions I'm asked is, do we need to build a new inpatient tower? Do we need 20 more ED rooms? And the real answer is, I don't know, because we're not as efficient as we need to be in terms of patient throughput. So how do we solve this? We've identified the problem through physician feedback and feedback from our colleagues. So you bring a team of key physician leaders to the table and key operators, a small but mighty group, and there's very little focus on the problem. It's really about solutions. So, how do we expedite access to ancillaries, results? How do we be better partners with those subacute providers, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities? How do we more efficiently engage and retain, engage consultants and have our hospitalists take ownership of that inpatient experience? So there's just subtle examples, but it is an objective example of how we have docs at the table helping us solve these situations.
Yeah. I love that. If you guys haven't read Dan Heath's book, Upstream, I highly recommend it. But in his book, he talks about Expedia's call center. And not unlike our call centers where we have patients calling from everywhere in offices, but they had a new leader over their call center. And so he was just trying to get his head around, what are the calls that come in, how many are this, how many are that? Well, the vast majority of their calls were from customers who wanted a copy of their itinerary after making their online reservation when they all received it, but it was getting caught in spam mail or they had put in a wrong email address. But I won't ruin the story for you. The long story short of that is he started asking the question, why have a call center at all? Why not eliminate all calls instead of looking at the traditional way of, well, how can we reduce the call time, like from a 5-minute call to a 3-minute or a 2-minute? He was like, no, how do we eliminate them altogether and fix the problem so that customers don't have to call? So we could fill in the blank with don't have to register, don't have to, whatever it is, the step that they're getting bottlenecked. Or, Tommy always says here, we go from a bottleneck to a choke point, and that's what ends up happening. Before we can even get our head around we have a problem, we're choking. And so looking at it differently, and that's why it's hard sometimes when you have the front line, but they have to be at the table. They literally have to be at the table. Please hear me when I say that. But when you ask the hard questions, which also includes potentially eliminating their current role, but we have to everyone just clean slate it so we can get patients through. Maybe we need to go through Chick-fil-A drive-through and figure it out there as well. So thank you for that, Chris, too.
Maybe we have people meet our patients in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Registration in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Why even anywhere? I mean, why can't they just order it online like they do and just show up right to the department? A lot of times we've had to do what are called side doors. So we're just going to have to bypass the registration area until they get their act together, get their staffing, and the people in the department are just going to have to start registering. I mean, Devin, we did that at your place. So they just go to the department, and so they don't sit and wait for 2 hours and, all the trickle down effect of that. So we have another question. We're losing trust with our providers as leadership because no two reports, gotta love this, no two reports give the same answer. Have any of you had similar issues?
We're in the middle of that right now. Data. We have a lot of data, but not a lot of usable information, and we can't get things to connect. Then you try to sit down with your doctors to show them certain things, and they go, well, this report doesn't say the same thing. And therefore, no one trusts the information that you have. So we're presently working out with our electronic data warehouses.
Awesome. So are you talking about internal or external claims data, William?
We have internal issues.
Oh, internal. Okay. Which is kind of sad if you think about it, no offense, but I mean, that's what we're sending out bills from. That's, how we're staffing. So if our internal data is jacked up, that's generally we hear there are a lot of claims data related things. Somebody doesn't have them all or they're not as timely, but typically we can rely on the inside or internal data. But for our attendee who asked this question, William's exactly right, which you've probably already learned. You give docs wrong data one time and they never, ever trust your data again. I mean, talk about immediate loss of credibility. That will be a big nail in your coffin. We have another question. In the time of reduced or no margins and high cost, how are you utilizing your business development teams whose prior focus has been on growth? I'll answer that, but then I want a chance at it too.
So I would say we're sort of doubling down on their activity because you can look at your DPOs or your liaisons shifting market share, finding new physicians. I can tell you here, we've had some success in reaching out to independent family medicine, internal medicine physicians, creating other avenues of revenue because, if you're not growing, then ultimately bad things are going to happen. And so we will continue to make that investment day in, day out, week in, week out, because it is so important for us.
So Kim, I personally know who asked this question. So Kim, one of the thing is we'll never stop being about growth. It just needs to be strategic. As I said earlier, not all business is good business. Thank you, Stephen, who I believe is on the line, who embedded that in my brain. But I will tell you, we're still going after growth. To Devin's point, we can never stop growing, right? We're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. So we have to be very strategic about the margin and the business that we're going after. So guys, what else do you want to answer around focus that used to be on growth, but now in time of reduction may change?
So pre-pandemic, we were trying to be everything to everyone. And so growth was, it was consistent for us, but it was wild. And what I mean by wild, it wasn't necessarily strategic, and it wasn't necessarily the right growth. And we're better today when it comes to growth. We've made the decision that there are some areas that we don't intend to grow in. For whatever reasons, maybe our competitor is better at that service line, and potentially we'll back away from that. But then there are other areas that we are doubling down on. So we're just much more intentional about where we grow and the why behind it. And we are much more comfortable with recognizing the fact that it's not smart to be everything to everyone. It doesn't make operational sense. It doesn't make financial sense. It tasks your workforce. We're skating shorthanded, right? And if we ask people to be everything to everyone, that doesn't support our efforts to reduce burnout, fatigue, and all those things that are top of mind for us.
So that further supports what everyone said about being strategic, that no more can we, to Chris's point, be all things to everyone. And honestly, we never should have been, but we've had that luxury, or we really, we didn't have that, that slap upside the head to say it's a different day now. And something that you guys said too, and then Frank, I'm going to switch to you. When you talked about, when we talk about being strategic, it's the same thing as focus, because being strategic makes you focused. And so then you can rein people in when they start going crazy with the, with the loose cannons or the squeaky wheels. We can help with that. But I also wanted to say, but I think I completely lost my train of thought. So I'm now going to go senior moment. Now I'm going to go to Frank and let you finish it, and then we'll come back.
Thanks, Tammy. So in this new world, everything is finite, right? Labor resources, access to capital, space, so being much more focused on how do we use those resources, that ammunition that we have. And so whereas before we looked at a service line, now we're like, okay, within that service line, what specific cases do we want? Which leads you to what specific physicians who perform very specific cases do you want? And within those cases, really drilling into what are the surgical supplies. So much more granular levels of detail to make sure that if you're going to occupy a bed or an OR or a C-arm or nursing resources, you're getting the most strategic bang for your buck, as you pursue that.
Okay.
Tammy, this is William. I go back to something that Chris talked about. I agree. Focus on those things you need to. We have really, for growth, been working on our speed of execution. Our new CEO, who's been around about 6 months now, he has a theory of a fist of five. When a senior team's in a meeting, he says, give the number that you support. If you're a 2 or below, you got to explain for everybody. We walk out on the same page. We just talked about capital above $250,000. That usually takes us like 5 meetings. We're able to trim some things down in about 57 minutes. By doing this fist of five, you're talking in front of people's face. We don't need to have 3 and 4 meetings. And I would say we've tripled our speed on key decision-making. And we also have the doctors, the key physician leaders in the room at the same time, so that we have that equal representation from key stakeholders.
So all the right people are there when you're fist of fiving.
Yep.
So walk through exactly how that happens, the fist of five.
So you're bringing up some plans, and we need a decision. Is this where we want to go? Because like Frank said, we only have so many resources and 14 senior leaders. And if you say a 5, then hey, 3, 4, and 5, we go ahead. If someone in the room has a 2, they explain, and that may change what goes on in that conversation. But when you're walking out of the room, everybody in the external side knows that happened inside that room. So all those people are on the same page, or they defended themselves or explained why.
Okay, I love it. Do you guys have any other kind of decision-making process that, I mean, talk about acting with a sense of urgency. Wow, I love that. Well, I'll ask you another question from the audience. What advice or guidance would you give to a new leader in an organization who is working to better establish trusting relationships with physicians while also assuring boundaries are maintained to achieve an organization's singular focus? How do we maintain that physician trusting relationship while also making changes and navigating often uncomfortable circumstances? Sometimes we can't obtain physician buy-in. What advice would you give to a leader trying to navigate that? We want to start with you, Devin.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Tammy, I don't want to butcher your words, but I know in the liaison training you have the 3 B's. I think it is. To remind everybody what those are.
Be brief, be brilliant, be done.
Be consistent would be the 4th one that I would add. Okay. My most successful relationships with physicians have been based upon be relevant, be brief, be consistent, but consistency. That follow up, here's what I'm going to do, and I will come back to you with the answer, the result, whatever it may be. And I think those relationships, just like our personal relationships, just like personal professional relationships, are built on transparency, they're built on consistency, they're built on trust. Even if the physician ultimately doesn't buy in, you will still have the credibility with them. And if that time, circumstances change, they may leave your competitor, they may, for whatever reason, want to come and partner with you, have an interest, then you will have that history, that consistency, that relationship, and that credibility with them.
Okay, I love it. William, you want to take a stab? And then Chris.
As a leader, you have to be trustworthy and accountable, and you got to be predictable and vulnerable. I think an important part for me has been that I've worked in mission organizations. I try to live the mission. I realize healthcare is a calling, and I do try to have proactive relationships with the physicians, not just when I got to talk to you about an issue. Okay, I'm walking around the hospital. I'm doing it not just 8 to 5. I'm coming in on Saturdays once in a while, once a quarter on night shift. That way, they know that they have the opportunity to say something to me. And every one of the doctors has my personal phone number, so they can call if there's an issue. But the relationship cannot just be when there's an issue, and you better be predictable and trustworthy.
Yeah, William and Devin said it. It's truly about communication and earning trust. And how you do that is through just that communication and follow through. I always tell, or as we talk about physician relationships with my senior leaders and our management team, anyone this applies to, but when we're talking about medical staff in this instance, our docs and our mid-level providers should never be wondering or never be waiting for an answer. We understand the reality of this work is the answer we have to give to people isn't always what they want to hear or experience. But as long as we close the loop, people will always stand behind you. As a matter of fact, when I started at St. Elizabeth's here, my office is right outside the physician lounge. People think I'm nuts, but I just want to be accessible, visible, and I want to be with our docs. And it's great. It creates communication. It creates trust. But the key takeaway or the key point I'll make, follow through. You don't miss that. That accountability piece is really important.
Awesome. Frank?
Yeah, from the perspective of the questioner who is early in their career, first and foremost, if you say you're going to do something, do it. But if you don't have the ability to, or you don't have the authority to make it happen, be transparent with that too. Don't get manipulated into being the person that feels like they have to tell them what they want to hear. And now you've got yourself and your bosses in a pickle. And then as you grow and you build that relationship, what Chris was saying about follow through and circling back. Oftentimes that role early in the career can be the conduit of communication that with Chris's or Williams or Devin's schedule, they might not be able to get back in a timely fashion. But if you have a reliable can go communicate on your behalf to the physician, that enables that young or developing leader to build that rapport and credit, still staying, appropriately within the lines.
And if you're consistent and you do follow through, when something does go wrong once in a while, they will give you the benefit of the doubt.
It's interesting. I think we're all, particularly as emerging leaders, I know I was guilty of this, and Frank really hit the nail on the head, but you want to say yes, right? You want your cardiologist, your surgeon, you want them to like you. You want to be able to go to them and say yes. And anytime you have to say no or come back with an answer that you think is going to upset them, we delay that. Again, going back to crucial conversations. I've progressed the most of my career once I got comfortable with the fact that you're dealing with scientists, you're dealing with physicians who have oftentimes spent a lifetime of telling people bad news. If you're upfront, if you're direct, if you're transparent, if you're honest, and you follow up, they will take bad news better than I think a lot of us interpret that they're going to receive that information. Oftentimes we create situations and narratives in our head that don't actually play out until we don't do what we're supposed to do. We don't communicate effectively. And then we have to give them bad news after making a promise or commitment. And that's where those relationships devolve. And so once you get comfortable with having those crucial conversations, telling doctors no, having a reason behind the no, I think you will find, I have very rarely had a physician flip out, for lack of a better word, because we're delivering bad news, but I think we do a pretty good job of trying to communicate effectively with them and let them know I'm going to do everything I possibly can, but ultimately the answer may be no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I think they're just such great poker players that they may even be prepared and knowing that you're going to say no, but they enjoy watching us dance around. No. It's like, we're like game to them.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have just a few more minutes, but I don't want to end this without Chris talking about some of the around staffing and resource issue. You guys came up with this really awesome on-call program. Talk about that.
Yeah. So it's been mentioned a couple of times during our discussion today that, labor and workforce limitations challenge us all. And this arose out of the pandemic. We all have agency or travelers within our organizations, or we have had in the past. We've been exposed to that resource. And thank goodness, that those people were here to help us. But we all know that they've come at a cost. So we worked, internally as a health system and created our own internal float pool or our own internal agency with our own people. They were compensated at a higher rate than they would if they were a floor nurse in my hospital here. But what went along with that compensation, they could be in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, they could be in Springfield, Illinois, they could be in O'Fallon, Illinois, or they could be in Green Bay. They were moved across our health system. That not only allowed us to create opportunity for the people that we had within our hospitals at that time, but it was a good recruitment tool. And now that we're on the heels of the pandemic, we're getting away from the pandemic bonuses and a lot of those financial incentives that came along with the pandemic. These people we are now seeing fall into, fixed term roles, with us. So it not only helped us eliminate the agency burden from a cost perspective, not eliminate, reduce, it also helped our recruitment abilities. Now, it wasn't a perfect system, but it is an example of being able to stand something up quickly and operationalize it.
And didn't you, out of the pandemic, something change for the positive related to your laboratory services?
So just with COVID testing, as again I mentioned, we're a 15 hospital health system. We initially were outsourcing all of those, PCR tests, but we were able to get our hands on the equipment and the supplies and establish, PCR testing hubs in a couple locations in Illinois and one location in Wisconsin, and we created a courier system. So we were moving these COVID specimens all over the state of Illinois in an expeditious fashion. So it was it just allowed us to result people quickly. We initially partnered with some of the national partners, and they were exceptional, but their reference labs were in South Carolina, for example. Now, obviously, it takes time to move those specimens, but again, just an example of rapid innovation.
Mm-hmm. That whole sense of urgency, I just wish we didn't fall back on our, we can't do that now, because there wasn't anything we couldn't do or try during the pandemic. And so if we could get that mentality and not fall back into that old paradigm of we don't do things like that around here, or once you've been around here a little longer, you'll understand why. It's like, no, I'll never understand why. So in our last couple of minutes, I'm going to round robin. I'll go alphabetical just to say any parting words of encouragement to your colleagues or aspiring leaders who are listening today around just amazing leadership recommendations. Chris?
Yeah. Thanks, Tammy. So my words of advice are, I think we need to recognize the fact that this work is complicated. It's not easy, but we're built for it. We're prepared for it. We need to remember and never lose sight of, even the fun days or even the challenging days should be fun and exciting. And we own that. We have to sometimes, go get the joy. But I think keys to success, we've talked about it today: communication, transparency, honesty, and follow through. I think if leaders do those things, you'll be served well long into your career.
Okay, thank you, Devin.
That's what I would say, I guess, maybe to emerging leaders, and again, we've talked about this today, but execution, the ability to identify a problem or propose a solution to your bosses. And that certainly was beneficial for me on my path for creating new opportunities, as I was seen as somebody that could get something done. The other is attitude covers a lot. The very first job I ever had in healthcare, in the interview, the guy said to me, "How much does this job mean to you?" And I was dead serious. I said, "I will sleep on the loading dock to come work here." And he said, "You know what? I can teach you the skills. I can't teach passion, and I can't teach enthusiasm." So those things, like, you look at this panel, we're all having fun. We're all very passionate about what we do. We've all had our successes. Trust me, we have all had our failures. But that internal drive and desire is what keeps us going today. And so find that passion, find an inspiration, find a mentor. I think that's so incredibly important for people, and execute. Execution will take you a very long way.
Oh, thank you. My favorite word. Frank, how about you? What are your words of encouragement?
Yeah. If there was ever any doubt, the last 3 years has shown us that we work with the most amazing, intelligent, resilient workforce, I would argue, of any industry. And the folks that are remaining clearly want to be here because Lord knows they have options. So leverage their dedication and their resilience and their intelligence to help us solve the problems of the future, because I guarantee you they have the answers down in the workforce to all of our problems. And then lastly, I would say, just as leaders, remember to say thank you to those folks that are with us every day who have been through so much. You tell someone thank you, and in terms of their engagement, it skyrockets immediately. Output, motivation, because people just want to know that as they've sacrificed so much and put so much effort in it, that you see it and you appreciate it and you care. So
thank you.
But I got
William, you want to cross the finish line?
Yeah, words of wisdom there for everyone. The fact is we can do it. We've been through hard times. I think our focus on, each day, what's right and what can I control? And, as a young leader, remember, results get you a voice at the table. If you can produce results, and boy, do we have a lot of problems out there that we need results for. And I think the main thing for me to always realize, this is a calling, so you're not alone.
Thank you. Well, thank you to all of my panelists. You've been amazing. The preparation was as fun as today was. So thank you so much. I know you're so busy, and I appreciate you taking time to share your wisdom with all of us today. And thank you for all of our attendees. We look forward to seeing you in the new year at our upcoming leadership webinar series. Thanks, everyone.